been frozen out.
Facing an extinction level event.
We don't fight this fight right now, you're not going to have black-owned media. All right, folks, so y'all always hear me talking about the money. It's the money, the money. If you want to understand America, all you got to do is deal with the money. If you ain't talking about money, you ain't talking about America. And so you've heard me talk about the black-owned advertising contracts, how we are not receiving those dollars. The GAO, the General Accounting Office study that Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton commissioned showed in 2018, over a 5-year period, black-owned businesses, black-owned media companies received $51 million out of $1 billion. Folks, 1%. That's what we got. 51 million. Okay? Now, you might say, okay, fine, Roland, that's black-owned media. It has to be a lot more in the rest of the federal government. Yeah, 0.67 more. Out of the billions spent in the federal government, and when we say billions spent in federal government, that means taxpayer dollars, your dollars, you are only getting 1.67% of all federal contracts. Joining us right now is Ron Busby, CEO, U.S. Black Chambers, Inc. Ron, let people, how much money are we talking about? How many billions are we talking about here?
Great question, Roland. And it was a great segue to what you just discussed in reference to reparations, because we understand that this is a time to talk about an economic conversation. And so up until last year, we had never really known what the government was spending with black firms. You always heard the conversation about minority firms and minority spend. And so last year, the U.S. Black Chamber really challenged the Biden administration to say we were looking for three things. The first one being intentionality. We understood that the minority programs were really being benefited by white women, and we wanted to know what the real spend was for black folks.
The whole top site right there. So somebody's watching right now saying, hold up, how are you going to have women in the minority category? I'm going to use the example. When I was at the Chicago Defender, they were spending about $190 million rebuilding the Dan Ryan Expressway. And we were at the House of Hope, Reverend James Meeks, and he had the Illinois Black Caucus there, and I was there covering it. And they were presenting and they were showing all the numbers, and they were talking about, oh, here's how minorities spend. And so I'm sitting there and I go, I got a question. They showed women, blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, Pacific Islanders, and other. And I sat there and I said, the women category. I said, if you a black woman, which category are you in? The women category or the black category? And the guy said, well, you're in the black category. Okay. And so if you Latina, are you in the women category or are you in the Hispanic category? He said, well, you in the Hispanic category. I said, so if you Native American or Pacific Islander or other, which he said, well, you're an Asian. I said, so really that W should be WW. White women. Yeah. And what people need to understand, since affirmative action was put in place, Arthur Fletcher under President Richard Nixon, there's been no group that has benefited more from MWBE programs, minority/women business owners, which really should be minority/WW for white women business owners. No group has benefited from affirmative action programs, MWBE programs, more than white women.
You're absolutely
Now you can
right.
continue.
Last year, we challenged the Biden administration, and for the first time, many of us saw him go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, go to the site of the massacre at Tulsa, where we called Black Wall Street. And for the first time, he disaggregated the numbers. And as you spoke earlier, we saw that that represented 1.67% of the actual spend went to black firms. What that represents, Roland, is about 9.6 $3 billion of the entire $560 billion in total federal contracting dollars, which represents, again, as we say, 1.67%. Now, also, you must understand that we have about 9% of the certified businesses, meaning businesses that can do business with the federal government. We represent about 9% of those, but yet we're only getting less than 2%. So our goal is to say, well, how can we get to 1.67% to, let's say, 4%? We heard the president say, hey, he wanted to increase minority spend from 5% to 11% this year and ultimately 15%.
So hold on. So before you go forward again, so I want people to see this here, y'all. So y'all see right here. So because see, I'm all about damn percentages. I want numbers. So the federal government matter of fact, the federal government spends $560 billion total in federal contracting. So out of $560 billion, black people are getting $9.366 billion, right? Okay, now, I'm gonna put a pin here because, see, right now, this is where I'm about to smack all you dumbass black people who fell for the okie doke with Donald Trump's platinum plan. All y'all fools who were like, why y'all didn't support the Trump platinum plan? He was offering $500 billion to black people. Yo dumb asses got played. Y'all didn't realize that Donald Trump, all he did was take the total amount. Donald Trump was not trying to offer $500 billion to black people because he couldn't do that when the federal government spends $560 billion total. He was playing black people with the numbers. And so we always make that point to these silly fools who still tout the platinum plan, which was a joke. So that's the deal. That's what we got to be focusing on right there. And so when we go over here, this is what we see. And I want y'all to understand this. $7 billion for Asian Pacific American owned, $9 billion for subcontinent Asian American owned small, black owned small, $9 billion, Hispanic owned small, $10 billion, Native American owned small is $15 billion, other minority owned small is $3 billion. So Ron, what is other small business $88 billion? What is that?
A very unique category that Native American Alaskans have called the Native American Alaskan 8A program. So there's another slide that we're going to showcase. But for black businesses that do business with the federal government, there was a program that was really created for minority firms called the 8A program. It was a great program in the original stages. It's created by the Republican Party. It was for underutilized, underserved communities that you could get registered, you could get certified, and do business with the federal government. Very difficult to get in. The challenge is most of the contracts that black businesses could apply for fall up under the sole source arrangement. Under the sole source arrangement, the largest contract that you can get is a $4 million contract. The Native Americans, on the other hand, and I heard you just mentioning this in the previous conversation, they can get up to $100 million contract.
Whoa, hold up. I want you to repeat that.
There you go.
How much? What's our maximum?
Our maximum is $4 million for a sole source contract. That means I go to a hospital, or let's say we're talking about this new infrastructure. So we're going to build bridges and highways and stations. You can't build a bridge for $4 million. The total contract that I can be awarded is a $4 million contract, and I can only have it up till 9 years that I can be in the program, the 8A program. For the Native Americans, they can be in it for perpetuity. We were just talking about being able to trace your heritage. If I can say that my great-great-grandfather was Native American or lived in Alaska, then I can consider myself Native American, which allows me to get into a program that my great-great-great-grandchildren can now benefit from never having to reapply for the particular program or for the contracts that they get awarded.
So you Native American, once you in, you in.
You in.
Okay.
And so we're saying, how can we create generational wealth in a 9-year span? It just cannot.
First of all, in a 9-year span when it's capped at $4 million.
At $4 million.
Okay. So let's do this here. Go back to the last slide, y'all. Because I think it's important for us to do this because people need to understand. So it says not a small business, 420 billion. We learned this during the whole PPP thing, Ron, that in the United States, a small business is categorized as less than 500 employees.
Correct.
So it's a lot of large businesses running around, and we saw it with the restaurants. The chain restaurants broke it down to individual locations to qualify for PPP loans. So we're talking about, again, so people understand how the numbers work. When you hear the phrase, let's help small businesses in America, really, they're talking about folks from 499 employees on down. Black-owned businesses, look, pre-COVID, there were 2.6 million black-owned businesses. 2.5 million had one employee. So
since COVID, those numbers have been updated, but the percentages are about the same. We're down to about 900,000 black.
Now, before I go back to the other slide, I need you also to explain to people in this not a small business category. Now, y'all listen, like we teaching y'all this Civics 101, your government money. Not a small business got 420 billion out of the 560 billion. Now, what y'all don't realize is under Republican presidents, they bundle the contracts, meaning they can only, if you one of these folk, you can only qualify for the projects because you can't afford the investment, the bonding, and everything else. Obama-Biden, they unbundle the contracts to allow for minority businesses to compete. Trump came in, then bundled them back. Ron, are we seeing Biden-Harris unbundling these contracts to allow for minorities to compete?
We're seeing some of that, and you'll see us doing more advocating on that behalf as we really start to look at this infrastructure opportunities. We had a meeting yesterday or this week with HUD. They are very intentional because we're looking for three things. The first one being the intentionality, what we're speaking about. The second one is the transparency, which we now actually see. And then the third piece is the accountability, because as you stated, many of the large contracts go to large government contractors, and they say we're going to subcontract to minority firms, but we see very little of that actually happening to black firms. What we have here is to say, okay, well, I know that my good friends here want to talk about government contracts, and you'll see that the majority of the firms are getting sole source contracts, but for black firms, the largest contract we can get under a sole source relationship is a $4 million contract, which isn't going to cut it in these new opportunities that are being discussed and implemented across.
So with that point, and the reason it's important, y'all, and I keep telling y'all, all these other folk who claiming they media, they ain't having these conversations. So that's why you need to understand who's real and who's not. So Ron, what should our marching orders be? Because if you're sitting here with the 8A contracts, that's right here, and you're seeing, first of all, before I go to that question, just hold that question. Explain the chart here. I see other 8A awards. I see sole source. Then I see set aside. Explain those three for the people who are watching.
Great question. So I'm a former 8A contractor. It's a great program. Many times there would be contracts that were already there in the 8A program that were just awarded to the new companies that are coming in. You could go and negotiate a contract for yourself as an 8A company, and it would be sole source to you. There are other contracts that are set aside just for the 8A program, so no other firms could compete for it, and those were already in the program year after year after year. They were set aside for 8A firms. No other firm can compete. Some of the things that have happened since this administration has been in that people don't really understand many of the terms and conditions that go inside the contracts. There used to be this program called Best in Class. And so, for instance, during COVID and during the unrest, there was a great deal of concern in reference to American flags. And so we had companies come to us and say, hey, Ron, can you find a black firm that can manufacture flags? And we said, sure. We got firms that, can sew and put together manufacturing right here in Baltimore. Went to them, came back with a great proposal to the federal government. But there are best-in-class firms that we just can't compete with, i.e., private prisons. Private prisons are government contractors that pay 30 cents an hour to do the work of contractors on the outside that are paying minimum wage, $15 an hour, that will never be awarded those contracts.
All right, hold on. I want you to stop there. I want you to repeat that. So I need everybody listening to what Ron just said. Black-owned businesses. Listen to everybody, listen to me. What he just said is black-owned businesses cannot compete against companies that are using prison labor to do the work, which means when you say prison labor, that's black people.
Same black guy that's in prison today doing the work can't get the contract when he comes out of prison that wants to do the same type of effort for a similar opportunity. It's just not being awarded. And so we have changed some of those terms and conditions, and that's some of the good things. But what happens, Roland, for your listeners, is there's so much in these contracts, in the policy that's written in the middle of the night that we agree to that we really don't understand. And so to be on your show, to be able to tell people, hey, here's some of the things that we're fighting for are also good information. Last year, 40%, we all heard 41% of black businesses went out of business. But when we interviewed them, 70% said the reason that they went out of business is because they just didn't have the information. We know that it wasn't about, black folk aren't financially literate. That's not true. We didn't have the relationships with the banks. But more importantly, as you've been discussing before, on a Friday, contract of $439 billion from the federal government saying, hey, we're going to release PPP. Saturday, $250 billion of it already been awarded to 50 white publicly traded firms. We didn't have an opportunity to be able to even understand the information to be able to go, and then they tell you to go establish a new banking relationship in the middle of a virus.
I'm going to read this one again. I want to read this one again. Because again, y'all, I need y'all to understand. See, y'all always talking about, man, why you always talking about the money? What did Ron just say? We don't have the information. No one's explaining it. That's why this show matters. Do y'all understand that right now more people are watching this segment and getting this information at a single time? There's no other group in the country that's talking to this many people, this many black people at one time, breaking this thing down. Ron, this is what the 8A program is effectively only for a very small portion of all minority firms. As a percentage of the estimated total number of minority firms, only 0.035% receive an actual federal government contract from this source. This means that for 99.7% of minority firms, this source is unavailable. For black firms, the picture is even more damaging. Why?
For a couple of reasons. One of them you mentioned, the bundling and debundling of the contracts. We had a lot of firms that were getting into the 8A program and just weren't getting any contracts. Second piece of that, you can get a contract January 1st and may not get paid till July 15th because the federal government is a very slow payer. During the Obama administration, they implemented the prompt pay program, which allowed you to get paid within 15 days. Under the Trump administration, that was removed. It went back to somewhere around anywhere from 90 days all the way up to 6 months.
No.
Black
Oh,
firms-
wait. No. See again. I know some of y'all. I love y'all at home when y'all say, Roland, why y'all interrupting? Because sometimes you got to slow some stuff down so you can understand that. Greg Carr know what I'm talking about, just like in class. If you got a student who ain't catching it, you got to say, hey, Doc, hold on, slow that down. Y'all, I want y'all to listen to what Ron just said. I'm going to use a real life example. There was some work that we did for a major company in August of 2021 that we here the payment did not show up at our bank until January. I need y'all to hear what I just said. There was some work that we did, 6-figure work, in August. The payment didn't show up to January. Now, because of y'all giving, because I know how to manage money, we were able to pay our payroll in September, October, November, December, and January, and we're not sweating the money coming in. A lot of other people not in that situation. So if you don't change the rules for payment, then black firms are sitting here. We can't wait 6 months for a check to come in. Ron, go ahead.
And we know we pay twice the rate for the same capital that our white firms that are competing us against.
And when you say twice the rate, you mean interest rates.
Interest rates.
Right.
Yeah, the average black person is paying twice.
Right. And luckily for us, praise the Lord, I got no debt, I got no loans, I got no interest. So I don't have that issue. But again, this is what we have to deal with. Okay, Ron, go ahead. Finish that point.
So the last thing I wanted to tell you is about media, because I knew you were going to ask this question. How much is actually being spent with black-owned media? Because I hear you talk about this often, and I don't have a total number. What we do know is that, and you probably have heard this, Congressman Hank Johnson and 31 other members from the Congressional Black Caucus sent a letter to President Biden asking him what their spend was with black media. We can say that during the virus, that HHS spent $360 million total. Of that, roughly $20 million went to black media, which represents about 5.5%.
Actually, I'm gonna hold you on that, Ron, because I need you to do some help here. I read that letter. In that letter, under the $20 million for black-owned businesses, they included the Oprah Winfrey Network. The Oprah Winfrey Network is not a black-owned business. Discovery, which now is Discovery Warner, owns 95% of the Oprah Winfrey Network. So I've told Congressman Hank Johnson's office, and I would like for y'all to hit HHS as well, is to say, HHS, what we need is, and they only cited 3 black businesses when it's hit the 20. No, what we need to see, Ron, we need to see the whole list of all of the so-called black-owned media that got that $20 million, so we can look at it and go, no, they not black-owned, they not black-owned. So I'm still waiting on that as well. So I'm curious to know how much OWN got, because they're claiming, it total 20 million. Well, if OWN got a majority of the 20 million, that 5 points goes down.
102%.
So
that's a great segue into what we do effective last year, and that is we now certify black-owned businesses. Many businesses claim to be black-owned, and we saw that last year under a lot of the programs that were being discussed. We heard a lot of corporations saying they were going to spend with black firms. We heard $1 billion of commitments, but very little of that could be traced back to real spend. And so a lot of the conversation was, well, we don't know where to find black firms. And so the U.S. Black Chamber came up with a certification, BYBLACK.US, buyblack.us, where if you are 51% owned by a black person or more, you can now be certified. I, as a certifying agency, I'm not as concerned about your profitability or your losses. I want to know, are you who you say you are? And is the owner who they say they are? We've seen, as Roland has just mentioned, many businesses claim to be black owned, but we cannot find the fact that they are. They may have two different owners on different documentation, depending upon where the opportunity lies. We also know that many of our firms aren't certified, and so it's difficult for them to be classified as black-owned or to be found and to be supported. And so a lot of organizations are charging exorbitant dollars just to say you're certified. You can be certified as an Asian-owned business in America. You can be certified as a gay and lesbian-owned business in America. You can be certified as a woman-owned business. But black and brown businesses are certified as minority programs, minority businesses. So we say, no, we want intentionality. We want to make sure that you are being certified as a black-owned business so that we can now hold the federal government as well as the private sector accountable. And then we can also hold you accountable. Understand that we even partnered with the national organization that wanted to give us a face of our certification program, but they couldn't be identified as black-owned initially because of venture capital. The owner said, gosh, you're right. And then they went and bought back some of the shares of their own business to make sure that they were 51% owned.
Well,
so the U.S. Black Chamber understands the concerns, and we're putting in programs to make sure that there's accountability.
Well, I'm going to tell you this, Ron. We were meeting with a particular company, and they actually asked us, were we certified as a MWBE? And I said, who the hell are you looking at? And they're like, what do you mean? I said, I own 100% of the company. I'm 100% black. I think I'm certified.
We can make sure you can get certified then.
Yeah, I let them know. I think I'm certified. We got questions. Larry, I saw during some of the presentations, you were just shaking your head at hearing some of those numbers. I'm going to let you go first.
Wow, Roland. I mean, that's
and don't hold against Ron here, Kappa. But go ahead, Alpha. Go ahead. Okay. Go ahead, Brother Larry.
Yeah, Ron. I'm not going to hold against. I'm not going to hold against you, brother. But I want to say, first of all, Roland, that you gave a masterclass and having Ron on, because honestly, there are a lot of black folks, including me, some of these stats, and even had worked on Capitol Hill, I wasn't aware of currently. So thank you for that. So, Ron, I want to talk a little bit about, these percentages, which are really tiny, right? So black people make up about 13% of the U.S. population. Do you have any studies or reports? Because we talk about generational wealth, and then you talk about this lack of information, right? So can you even give us an idea if that money in terms of some of these contracts, federal contracts, equated to the 13% of black folks, in terms of the most recent Census Bureau data, what kind of number, what would that number, if you have a study or have any idea what that number, that if it was at 13%, what would it look like overall in terms of the money that came to the black community?
Great question. I don't know what the 13%, but we could do the math. I will tell you, though, that we have gone to the federal government and said, hey, what would 4% look like? So not being, unrealistic, but to go from 1.5% to 4%, we think that's attainable. And to answer your question, that could represent somewhere around $20 billion. That's a lot of $100 million.
Stop. I can't let you just speed past that. Listen to what he just said. We're getting $9 billion right now. You go from 1 to 4. That's an additional $11 billion, which means what now takes us 2.25 years to get, we could get in 1 year. Ron, go ahead.
So that's to answer your question in reference to the 4%. That is the goal. There's got to be some.
No. Hold up. That ain't the goal.
There we go.
That ain't the goal. That's where we want. That's where we want to get to next year. The goal is about 15%. Yeah, go ahead. I don't want them sitting there going, "Oh, Ron said the goal." No. That's the goal for next year. The goal is to match our population. Ron, go ahead.
And so there's ways that can be done, but you have to be intentional. And so we had a great meeting with HUD. this week and brought ideas to Secretary of HUD, Marsha Fudge, who really understands intentionality. You have to have people on the other side to understand the issue, and then you have to have real data. For so long, we've just been taking it like, okay, well, minority spend is somewhere around 23%, and black folk and minorities were okay with that. We're saying, no. We need to really see intentionality. That's where we get the numbers today. And as Roland said, that's just the floor. We want to have real conversations about how do we get to at least the 10% in some short window, because I really believe that's how we reach a reparations conversation in the near term.
And see, Reese, your question's next. This is why I keep trying to explain to people. If black businesses get 9 and we get 20 billion, how many more folks we hiring? How much money going to HBCUs? How much money going to our churches? How much money is going to building wealth? And so when I hear these people, man, all you do is begging a white man for money. No, fool, it's our money. Reese, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have been in federal contracting for over 15 years. So there's a lot of money out there. And I have seen an increased emphasis in holding accountable these large corporations in terms of their small business goals. But we have heard throughout this evening how that is manipulated or how it's gamed so that, predominantly white women businesses are the ones that are benefiting from it. And the Alaska Native requirements are a huge deal. I have personal experience with that in the contract that I worked on. So I guess my question is, so much of the emphasis is always put on personal responsibility in terms of, individuals getting licensed or them meeting the requirements. But how much of this do you think really is going to take the federal government actually, making more contingencies or making more provisions to target Black companies, whether that is with changing the requirements? Just as another example, the administration recently announced that they're going to try to do more to increase the diversity in appraisers because that's 97% white. And part of what they are targeting is the requirements in terms of the education and in terms of the apprenticeships and things of that nature. So I think that they're perfectly capable of doing it. So I just want to get your read on, is this really a two-pronged approach where we have to emphasize individual action as well as federal action?
I think it's a combination. You've also mentioned the private sector. I think the private sector looks at D&I, diversity and inclusion, many times in reference to hires and HR. We're saying, as Roland has been stating, where's the money? I want to know where the dollars are being spent. In reference to individuals, yes, there's some things that Black business owners can do to make themselves be found, prepare themselves for contract opportunities. But then there's a great deal of responsibility on the federal government. And I think that this administration is attempting to at least understand where they are. For so long, we've not even heard the numbers of the data to be able to have a conversation. And so often we go in with emotional cries. I think now we're saying, hey, we're at 1.67%, but yet we represent 13% of the population. We want to see a 4% spend with Black firms and bring them a plan to say, here's how you reach that goal. Part of it is debundling. Part of it is paying on time or even early. Part of it is making sure that we have access to the information as well as access to good credit and access to good organizations that are going to be able to bring you the information like this we're doing this evening.
Greg.
Thank you, Roland. And I agree with Larry. This is a master class. And thank you, Brother Busby. I'm still fired up off that Florida voting rights decision and the reparations conversation. So I'm going to use that momentum to come in right here. Because as I'm sitting here, I'm trying to think, how could you make a tax code argument with the 14th Amendment through a rate? I mean, the universe possibilities comes down to this. This is public theft. We know this is public theft. We paid those taxes, and they have set up a system where they can steal it legally. Can I ask you, even the unbundling and the bundling policy really floored me. And so my question, I guess, comes really in the wake of what Reese just laid out in terms of the involvement of the federal government. What are the obstacles, the largest obstacles to policy changing at the federal level? And what is the role of lobbyists? And how important is campaign finance reform? Because it seems to me that these politicians that are allowing this to pass have been bought and paid for. This public theft, this theft of public dollars is something that they've been, basically rented to enable. I mean, what can we do politically to even think about how Cliff was talking earlier, to kind of loosen some of these things and get our money back? As Roland said, where's our money? We know it's going to the pocket of these private companies.
Well, for a long time, the Republican Party did a great thing. And again, I'm not blaming the Democrats or the Republicans for this, because for a long time, this country said that it wasn't going to have race-based policy as it related to economic conversations. And so for a long time, we couldn't have conversations about intentionality. Where and how are we going to mandate that we spend with black firms, because there weren't there weren't black policies as it related to contracts. The closest thing we had was the 8A program, which was created by a black man, Percy Sutton, who really understood the challenges that black business owners had, but it had to be written under the guise of minority programs. And so once again, what we thought and created for us has now been kind of changed to benefit other groups outside of what it was originally created for. And so what we can really start to talk about political juice and relationships, as well as lobbyists, is to make sure that they go in and they understand policies that are really having impact, and how to be able to change some of those policies to really have positive impact. And some of it is just really difficult because it is very detail oriented, and it's overlaid with layers and layers of different policies to get to the crust of really where the concern and the issue can be addressed.
All right. Ron Busby, CEO of U.S. Black Chamber, Inc. Man, I appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Again, we're going to keep pressing our people. In the words of Frank Lucas in American Gangster, I'm going to get that money.
There you go.
All right. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. All right, folks. See, this is why you need to be supporting Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Ain't no other show out there. Black News Channel, they gone. These other so-called people out here who claim they new black media, they not breaking this kind of stuff down. They're not bringing these kind of experts to the table so you can hear the information direct and giving you the roadmap to know what you should do. That's why you should support this show. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Also, support us in our Bring the Funk fan club. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. And of course, you can send your check or money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. Hey, folks, welcome back. Patrol Grooming, of course, is a men's grooming company that delivers on this promise every day to men everywhere. Everything we do, every product we make is designed to help you to present your best self. Now, y'all see me. I'm sitting here wearing a suit today, but clean shaven. This is the video from this morning as I was using Patrol Grooming's products. You can actually see it right there. Folks, it's a promise they have kept since 1991 when they first introduced the Bump Control brand, the #1 men's product for a smooth, bump-free, shave, and silky skin. Millions of customers count on their exceptional skincare products, which can be found at more than 30,000 retail stores in more than 50 countries around the world. Now you can have exceptional beard and skincare products that are as unique as you are. Brothers, as we prepare to head back out into the world as COVID restrictions are being lifted, it's time to be smooth and clean. Y'all know how we do. You know, that shaggy look, it got to go. Visit www.patrolgrooming.com to order a Patrol Grooming box and use this discount code, #Roland30, #ROLAND30 for a 30% discount at checkout. And we certainly appreciate Patrol Grooming being a partner with us here at Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank
the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?